So first off, that last presentation is going to be tough to follow. That was fantastic. I've done research for a long time and facilitated a lot of those groups, and I learned a ton. So next time I'm going to do one of those groups, I'm going to print that out and bring it with me or watch the video, or maybe just bring Laura with me since she works down there. So that was great. So I'm Tom Lorusso from Xbox Research, a couple hours down south in Redmond at Microsoft. I'm very excited to be here. I want to thank everybody for hosting such a fantastic event. It's always a good excuse to come up to Vancouver as well. Today we're going to be talking about how to think more strategically in UX. We've had a lot of great talks for the last day and a half, focusing on the user and product. So I want us to take the next half hour and be a little more selfish. I want us to talk about ourselves and think about ourselves. I want to talk about how to be more strategic when we think about our day-to-day work, our career, and then kind of up-leveling the discipline around UX. So I'm certainly going to talk about myself, so hopefully you guys can be thinking about yourself and your career as we go forward. So, okay, so it's not time for Q&A, but why do we care about thinking more strategically, right? What is that going to get us? In my career, over the last years, I have lots of conversations that have lots of questions, right? We want to get promoted, we want to, well, I'll just put them up right here, right? So lots of these questions that you have conversations with, I assume lots of you folks have had these conversations as well with each other, with your managers, sort of internally, right? How do I get buy-in from the higher ups? How do I grow my career? How do I shift left? That's a term we use. Just how do you get in earlier, right? Probably everybody said the words, I want to get a seat at the table. Now, I'm a giant Hamilton addict, so now I think about being in the room where it happens. I assume they have Hamilton in Canada. I know it's a historical reference for the US, but come on. So you want to be in the room where it happens, right? And in general, how do we up-level the UX discipline? These are lots of questions that you're going to have throughout your career, especially as you get further on down your career. And in many cases, the answer is, well, you have to think more strategically. Your work has to be more strategic. You just think more strategically, right? So what does that mean? So the goal of this talk is to give you, hopefully, 5 tools, 5 things that you can take with you and start thinking more strategically in your day-to-day life and overall in your career. So that leads to another question, which is, what do I know? Who am I? Why should you care? So like I said, I'm from Xbox Research, which is a pretty large team down in Xbox. My particular team, I manage about 7 very talented researchers. And I put this timeline up besides making myself feel a little dated. Thinking strategically is really a set of tools. It's a set of experiences that you gain over time. When I showed up in 2001, right when the original Xbox was launching and Xbox Live still wasn't around, I had no concept of how to think strategically. I was just very happy to have an actual job doing applied research in video games, which I didn't know existed about 2000. So it was just very exciting. And as you go on, of course, you develop some of these tools. The other reason that I talk about 5 lessons learned about thinking strategically is you get a lot of lessons and experience from success, but when you work on things like the Kin phone, which we sold about 4 of, and then Windows 8, which that's its own thing, you get a lot more lessons. And if I could go back in time and have some of these tools and thinking more strategically at the time, hopefully I could have had a better impact on some of those. But a lot of those, you're just kind of going down your career and trying to take as many of these tools and thought processes as possible. So now that in Xbox Research, hopefully ending up in a very good place where I can apply some of those learnings. If anybody wants an hour on Windows 8, we can do that over lunch. Oh, right. Like everybody else, I'm pointing at the screen. Here we go. So the first tool, it's really a shift in mindset. And if you don't like cheesy metaphors, I apologize. But we really want to shift our thinking from a funnel to a megaphone, right? And what do I mean by that? The funnel approach is great. It's everywhere. We have funnels for monetization, funnels for player engagement. And I think in a day-to-day basis, we think in funnels. We have all these requirements, partners, deadlines, everything in your day-to-day life, your inbox, your phone, notifications, everything in your life, trying to figure out how to take all of that and funnel it down to the work that you actually want to do, right? What can you get done this week, this month? What feature can you build? What product can you ship, right? So it's extremely practical to think in terms of a funnel. But what I'd like you to do is think about that shape of that funnel for a minute. And I want to tilt it on its side to talk more about a megaphone. So a megaphone is really designed to take something relatively small, like my speaking voice, if I'm not holding the microphone, right, and amplify it out to hundreds or thousands of people. I also love this metaphor because I almost never use a funnel or a megaphone, but I assume you guys know what they are. So there's a couple of ways to think about this, right? The biggest change here is in the funnel model, you're taking the requirements and you're coming up with the work you're going to do. when you start trying to think more strategically, you're trying to start with the work and say, how can this have a bigger and broader impact? How can I amplify it? And there's kind of a couple of factors you can think about. So we're going to take an example. Since I'm in research, let's just say you're doing a couple of weeks of research on the new player experience, right? We've heard a couple of talks on that so far. So one of the factors you can think about is impact. So of course you want to have impact on the UX, on the feature. You want to make that initial experience tutorial as great as it can be, of course. And I think in the funnel model, that's sort of the end point. But when you're thinking more as a Megaphone and really trying to think more strategically, that's just the starting point. Yes, of course you're going to make that UX feature better. But how can you improve the game or the release? And again, not in your career, but with that piece of work. How can you tweak it? How can you collect data on that first experience in a way that's going to help the entire game in the release? And then even more so, which is tougher to do, start thinking about the franchise or the studio, right? What can you teach them about first player experiences that they can use? Similar for the customer. The user, of course, it's a UX conference. It's the user and user experience. That's great, but again, that's just the starting point. How can you think about the product owners, right? The people, you're going to impact the customer experience, but what about the people you're working with on a day-to-day basis? And then how about the studio and the company, right? How can the work you're doing today impact those folks? Time, of course, same thing. We're all just running 100 miles an hour, whether you're on a sprint model, milestone, trying to ship out a feature or ship a game. You're thinking about today, this week, this month, but try to really look at your work and think, who's going to use it in a year? Is it going to be around in a year? Is it going to be worthwhile in a year? And the same thing with 5 years, which is tough. And then influence. To me, this is a little bit different than the impact of the customer. It's a little more squishy, right? So you're going to influence the product, but one of the things that commonly I talk about when I talk about thinking more strategically is everybody in this room is going to impact the product that is built. We have to start impacting how the product is built, right? We've had a lot of great talks about that already, right? How do we get into the process and affect the process? Then there's this sort of holy grail of culture, right? I think everybody in here, I think the big reason we're in this room together is because we want to affect the culture when we go back to our companies and to our studios. But that is not, yes, it's a year-long thing, yes, it's a career-long thing, but I want you to look at the work that you're doing, this study, the 1 month of research on that first player experience, and say, how are you going to do it in a way that can more impact the culture? It's not easy. Like I said, it's kind of the holy grail. So just to recap that, it really is tipping that funnel over, going from try to get requirements into the work to pushing it out and thinking about how the work you're doing can then amplify and help you over a longer period of time. So the second one, package your work. This could probably be even more accurately titled package how you work, right? Think about how you, your team, the people you work with in your discipline do work. And I had some old-timey pictures of like Christmas presents, but I thought it's really just Amazon. This isn't my doorstep, but it really could be. So it's all just Amazon packages right now. So when I talk about packaging up your work, I'm talking about an actual like deliverable, a document, a PowerPoint, a deck, a set of talking points, something where you're formally saying, this is how I work, this is what I bring to the table, this is the value you're going to get out of me if we work together, and have it in such a way that it's easy to communicate. Now, if you do this, of course, it takes time, but a lot of the theme around thinking strategically is you need to find those little bits of time here and there where you can actually do this work. The benefits, if you do a good job, you're onboarding new team members, partners. I mean, I think everyone in this room has had that conversation of, welcome to the team, this is what we do, or hey, we're going to start working with you on a new project or a new product, this is what we do, right? I'm talking about really getting formal for that so that it becomes easier. There's a list here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you do a good job, if you pick a nice method or a nice metaphor, you're going to arm your partners with a sticky message. So it's easy to be in that room and say, this is how we're going to work together. But what about 2 weeks later when those partners are talking about your team? What are they going to say about Xbox research? What are they going to say about your design team at Bungie or 343? Right? You want them to be able to repeat and share what you've told them. So it's important how you communicate that. And I think the most important reason, the thing that gets you to be most strategic when you're thinking is you're setting expectations for working together. So we're going to talk about this in an example, but when you show up, you're not asking people, hey, how should we work together? You're saying, this is the way we work. This is what I expect of you. This is what you can expect of me. And of course, there's flexibility in discussion, but this is how we're going to work best together for the next year or however long it is. And you set that tone right up front. So an example from my team in Xbox Research is called Stages. I didn't create Stages, but Tracy Seller-Fuller and a few other folks of my team came up with this. And this is from this is maybe a few years ago. So at the time, it was 10, 15 years of experience working with games and helping do user research on games. So there's quite a bit to it. There's a big deck. We have a nice presentation. But this really sums it up. When we talk to a team working on a game, when we say, great, we're user research partners, we're going to go forward and help you make this game, we present it like this. This is how we want to work with them. We want to start with core mechanics. We want to do user research on their learning systems, go to the first hour experience, and then up to the extended experience. And of course, everybody loves a good pyramid. I'm actually shocked. Is this the first pyramid I don't know. Usually there's tons of pyramids in these talks. So we're doing this. It's not sort of haphazard. It's very explicit. It's based on a lot of hard-earned learnings from years past. And so a couple of key points here. The reason we do it in this particular way is for our group, this may not be everybody's opinion, but for Xbox Research, we really believe that there's an order to these things. We believe you do start with the core mechanics when you're working on a game, and then you move to learning systems. And so it's a pyramid with a base on purpose, and core mechanics is bigger because we really do want to reinforce how important that is. The nice thing here when you're working with teams is this maps very well onto schedules for the team and also to research methods. So we can say, look, core mechanics and learning systems, we're going to be in the usability lab. That's what you can expect. When we start to get to first hour experience, you're going to start to see play testing. Extended experience is play testing and flighting and user surveys out in the wild. So the teams can actually start mapping this to their milestones and they set expectations. I'm sure everyone in this room has either had been asked or asked someone to say, great, we have mission 10, we want to go see if it's fun. That's not the best way that we want to work. And it's not theoretical. We've tried that. We've tried to measure people's fun in the 10th mission without learning systems or initial experience with bad core mechanics. You know what? They get a terrible fun score. They're not happy with us. We're not happy with them. We have to go back into the usability lab anyway. So this is the way we set expectations up front. And the beauty of this is it seems like it's really for a $60 2-year kind of title, but it actually scales really well. You can think about this in the mobile game where that initial experience and teaching people how to play and how to give you their money may even be more important, like we saw with some of the flick controls for the soccer game yesterday. So this really scales very well, and we're starting to use it a little more on platform. Games as a service where you've shipped, but you're just shipping iteration over time, it also works. This has been very successful, again, setting the expectations up front and saying, yes, there's flexibility, but if we work this way, we're both going to be much happier. So the next one, we're going to talk about crossing the teams. Now, I have said cross the streams of data so many times that my team doesn't even want to listen anymore. Crossing the streams of data shouldn't be controversial. Everyone in this room, especially at a UX Summit, probably attacks their problems with multiple streams of data, right? I think that's fantastic, and I think it's also tactical. We're thinking about the data we need for that day, for that problem. Very often, tactical can be the opposite of strategic, right? So how do we take something that's great, crossing streams of data, and think about it more strategically? To me, it's really about not thinking about the data as much as thinking about the people and the teams and the organizations behind the data. Now, granted, I've been at Microsoft for most of my career, but I'm sure, and that means big teams, that means lots of data teams sitting in the same hallway. But again, I'm sure that everybody in this room, regardless of the size, you've got people who sit next to you, who sit near you, who are doing something similar, right? They're a similar kind of team. We've heard about, UI versus UX versus artist designers, certainly big data versus qualitative versus user research. So I'm sure, hopefully this applies to everyone, not just folks in bigger companies. So just as a quick, just to kind of go further on that idea, right? You can see that there are these streams of data that you may be using. You'll have some usability data, some survey data maybe, Reddit, God help you if you're up on Reddit looking at that feedback. And then of course, if you're doing flighting, you may be getting bugs or bugs from previous games. So that's, again, very tactical and extremely useful way to think about it. But what I'd like to say is, look, let's get a little more strategic about how we work. Let's think about the people behind that. Because once you start thinking about the people and the teams that are providing that data and not just the data, you get a lot more power out of it. So user research, of course, and marketing, right? Maybe you have a marketing team or a marketing person, your community manager, and then whoever's running the beta or the flighting programs. And these could be the same people, right? But start thinking about where that data is coming from. So what are some of the benefits if you can really do that and align yourself with some of these teams instead of just trying to get their data? Well, you shorten the feedback loop, right? Because now you're working more closely together. You don't have to go and play a game of telephone like someone mentioned earlier. The biggest one on this list for me is that you're aligning those goals across multiple people or across multiple teams, right? So if you think about the data coming in from a beta, that's great. But what about the person who is running that program? What are they on the hook for? How are they going to try to get themselves promoted at the end of the year? What do their leadership expect from them? Right? What does the studio put them on the hook for? And how does that align with what you're trying to do? That can be a very powerful thing once you start having those discussions about how you and other folks and other teams can work together to try to achieve similar or even the same goals. And then the one around building advocates is the other one on this list. You want to have more people talking about your work, and the way you do that is you align with them and you say, we are now more of a shared team. We have the same goals, we have the same kind of talking points. And so when you're not in that room, you're not in the room where it happens that day, somebody can speak on your behalf. When somebody comes to them with a question, a research question, or a design idea, they're going to pull you in, and now you're going to be part of that same conversation. So it's really a way for you to scale your work, even if it's just scaling up to a couple more people. So as an example, I joined the Xbox sort of research platform side of the world a couple of years back, working more on the operating system and the dashboard. And we had this team called the Xbox Insider. So I'm assuming this is going to look familiar. Xbox Insider program is this kind of giant, maybe 800,000 people, 1 million people or so, of people who are kind of on our pre-release flighting for Xbox, mostly on dashboard features and console features, but also on games. And so here's this entire team at Xbox that they are dedicated to getting pre-release builds out into people's homes. Real customers are using earlier versions, they're flighting. And they also have this great feedback mechanism in the Xbox Insider app for surveys and filing bugs and all this kind of fantastic stuff, right? It's basically a user researcher's dream. And at the time when I joined, we were certainly working with them, and we were doing what I talked about earlier. It's like, great, what data do you have on this? Or could you maybe do a survey for us? Which was fine, but I could tell that it was just kind of haphazard. And thinking, looking at my team, and again, trying to take a little bit of time and think, how could we do it better? We wanted to get more strategic, and we realized that of all the groups at the company, this was really one that we had to align ourselves with because it was clear that we could do a lot of great work together. So, so this doesn't happen passively. You really have to make this happen. This is not just walk down the hallway and have a conversation. So I sat with the leads on that team, and we really got deep and tried to understand each other's goals, KPIs, et cetera. Again, not talking about the data, just talking about what we were trying to deliver to Xbox. And as you can imagine, somebody focused on flighting and Insider is they're trying to make the experience better for users, and that's what we were trying to do. And besides the other things on this list, the main one that we did was we started to turn our user research and design meetings. These were kind of weekly meetings where we'd be meeting with the engineering team and the designers. And it was very much user research plus design. Design would show the brand new hotness, which is why everybody showed up. Then I'd sneak my user research results in there, whether they want them or not. And we would just go through that on a weekly basis, and it was great. Attendance was high, and people loved it. It was some of the most fun meetings we've had. We looked at that, and we said, look, if we want to align with these folks, we need to bring them into those meetings. Literally drag them into the meetings, have them present with us, talk about our data together, so that we were talking about data, not just user research. This had pretty much an immediate impact of everybody else in the room, producers, engineers, designers, developers, they started looking to us as a group for the insights. They started saying, we need to answer this, so how can we answer it either in the lab or in flighting or through the Insider app, right? And it was, again, very visible, very public, and it helped us scale. Yeah. So just to show it was a success, like I said, we can be a little bit selfish and talk about our successes. For user research, it was great. We felt like we got a ton of insights from this partnership. Instead of doing dozens or maybe hundreds of people in the lab, we were now driving insights that were tens of thousands of people in real-world settings, right, which is fantastic, getting more valid data from more people. For the Insider team, they were actually getting closer to engineering and having more impact on the user experience than ever before. Because in our case, user research was always in lockstep with design. We were there very early, but it wasn't the case for the Insiders. So we used their tools and their scale, but then they used our connections, our relationships as part of the process. And it really worked well. And I was very happy to see on this particular, it was the 2017 launch of the dashboard, could easily say we had more feedback in more parts of the process than ever before. So it really worked out well for both of us. And the other thing on here is it's still going. So that's the tactical part, was trying to ship that, but the strategic part is now people working on Game Pass, people working on PC features for Windows, people working on other things at Xbox expect user researcher and the Insider team to come with this consolidated piece of data. And when they don't, they notice it and they remind us, hey, we need both of these kinds of data. So that's another way you can tell if you're being successful, right? If it permeates different organizations and teams. All right, the fourth one I want to talk about is embracing points of view. This one's a little bit squishy, but again, if you're trying to be more strategic, you're usually a little more in that squishy area. So what do I mean by points of view? Because I know it's a bit of a loaded term. So I want you to think about something you really believe in, something you've had experience with. We're going to go an example later. If we skip to the bottom, this is not your opinion, right? Everybody in this room has opinions about something, which games they like, what they think is fun, what they want to wear when they wake up in the morning. When I'm talking about a point of view, I'm talking about a synthesized chunk of research or insights that you can easily communicate and share with other people. So you might think of these as white papers, durable insights. You may think of it as desk research, something you do on a topic before you really go down a road of research, right? But the idea here is it's synthesized from data, and it's hard-earned experience. It's reusable, it's shareable, and it doesn't have to be yours, right? I've actually learned a lot in this last day and a half. Some of my favorite points of view I've gotten from other people, which we'll talk about in a moment. So you're thinking about moving from something that's just an opinion to something that's much more structured and formal, and again, taking the time to go ahead and write it down. So why is this important? Another Hamilton reference. When you're in those rooms, right, we want to be in the room where it happens. We want to have a seat at those tables. The higher up you go, the higher the partners are, those rooms are filled with ambiguity. They are filled with big decisions. They are filled with, should we go buy the studio or not? Should we cut that feature set? Should we spend this much money? Should we go after this new audience? Should we develop this new game, right? These are big, hard questions. That's why they make the big bucks. And there's a lot of ambiguity. And very rarely do they say, ooh, that's a good question. Let's go take 3 months and get tons of data about it, right? These people are making decisions in those rooms, and everybody in those rooms are going to have their opinions. Now, at least from the user research side, we tend to go in those rooms thinking, well, okay, we need data, and if we can't have data, we can't give our opinion. So as a trick, just start thinking about it as your points of view, right? You want to be in that room with everybody else giving their opinion and think, what point of view do I have to have? But again, it's not just an opinion, so we're going to go with a particular example. But the idea of this slide is you have to be ready to embrace the ambiguity and have to be able to express your opinions relatively formally on the spot. So one size does not fit all. This is one of my favorites. We actually have relatively formal process around points of view at Microsoft, not just in Xbox, but across research, which I'd be happy to talk more about. But this is just one example. I'm a big gamer. I love games. We're at a games conference. I also, through my career, tend to lean a little more towards the platform side. So some of the things I've worked on have been very focused on platforms like phone, media center, again, Windows. And platforms are interesting because when you think about platforms and input and going cross-platform, the things that I was working on tended to have the same kind of problems, right? A platform can be an operating system, and in some cases, like the old days of Windows Mobile, it was an operating system designed for multiple form factors. So before everything looked like an iPhone, there were tons of different form factors for phones. Some had keyboards, some had D-pads, some had styluses and not. So they were trying to design a mobile OS for all of that you could just put on any one of those phones and any of the carriers and sell them. The other way you do with platforms is you have a single device, like the Xbox when you plug in a Kinect, and now you have 3 inputs. You have the controller, you have voice, and you have gesture. So you're trying to design a single operating system to work well with 3 inputs. Now, when these decisions were made, I wasn't in those rooms. I was much further along on the left-hand side of my timeline. But we would see the impact of that, of those decisions, of people trying to do those things. And Mike Medlock also saw the impact of those decisions. He is my friend, one of my original managers, my mentor. He is now at Facebook, so he's dead to us. But I put his picture up here anyway. I love Mike, so I put his picture up here. He said, look, between I think it was mobile and Connect, he said, look, we're not learning our lessons. We are not understanding that one size does not fit all, right? And it's a beautifully written paper, picture something 3 or 4 pages long with lots of examples. But at the crux of it was, if you try to design something for multiple interaction methods, any one of those interaction methods is going to be mediocre at best and probably bad, right? And I think the Xbox with the Kinect is a great example. You can design a fantastic UI for a controller, but trying to do it for controller and voice and gesture, each one of them is going to be a little bit worse, and it really goes from great to okay into bad territory very quickly. And he actually had a lot of experience on mobile working on this as well. So I took this, I was reading this, as I was working on Windows 8, and I was saying, well, wait a minute, we already did the Connect, we already did the phone. How come we didn't learn our lesson on Windows 8, which has something like 4 start buttons on it, right? So how could a device need 4 start buttons? It's because they were designing device across PC, tablet, and all these other form factors. But more importantly now, I'm in those rooms talking about Xbox and cross-play and play anywhere. And I think anybody here working on a title has to think about how it goes cross-platform, right? Tons of fantastic news around Fortnite, PUBG coming out on mobile and cross-platform, which is all great. So the question is, so now I have this, I'm armed with this point of view, I'm sitting in those meetings, and instead of going out and finding new data, I can say, look, we've learned our lessons, here are the risks, here are some of the problems, here's my point of view on this, and it's not just my opinion because I can pull out the document, I can pull out some of these examples, and it's been very helpful pushing the conversations in the way that I think they can go. But again, not easy to do and doesn't happen unless you really explicitly take that time. So just got the 5-minute warning. So great, we're on the last one. So 5 reasons for doing anything. This is another thing. If you ask my team, what are you sick of hearing Tom say? It is this, have 5 reasons for doing anything. This is last because it's my favorite. It's also one of the most concrete tools. You can see it's a checklist. It does not get more concrete than a checklist. And so when I think about it, if you're in this room, you're probably doing fantastic work. And if you're brand new, you will be doing fantastic work. And usually as part of that, you're going to have this tidal wave of opportunities coming at you. Usually projects and products and things that you could work on, people asking you for 10 things when you only have time to do 2. If you're really lucky, you'll have a tidal wave of job opportunities that are coming at you that you also have to talk about. But for now, we'll just talk about this tidal wave of projects, right? So in the funnel approach, again, you're looking at the 20 things and you're saying, okay, what can I get done? What's going to be best for the user? What can I get done in the shortest period of time and have the most impact on? And that's great. But again, I just want to remind you, let's tip that over and think about the megaphone and the amplification of it and start approaching that problem a little bit differently. So when I say have 5 reasons, when I say having a checklist, this is not the checklist. And it's not 5 reasons. If you want to have 6, 7, 10, that's fantastic. The point of this is it shouldn't be 1 or 2 reasons. I bet everybody who came here and is here this week has more than 1 reason for being here, right? There's probably 5 different reasons that you actually took time out of your lives to come to this. So the same thing when you're looking at evaluating products. Again, this is just my list. You can have your own. The very first one, is it going to improve the experience? And the second one, is it going to move the needle? Those are great, but that's the funnel mentality. That's the tactical. Like, you should be doing those. That's your job. Now, what else? What else is this opportunity in front of me going to do for me? Is it going to be useful for a year from now? Does it give us some new insight into the business? And one of my favorite is, does it expand how people think about user research or design or UX? Right? Does doing this now going to give me these other benefits in the future? So an example, again, a couple of years back when I joined the team thinking about platform, I came from a gaming background, so have been doing lots of play testing and lots of the other methods we use in games. And I was talking to my design partners, especially Chris Novak, who also came out of games, and we were having this great conversation around play testing for the Xbox dashboard. At the time, we were just doing a lot of usability testing, because remember, this is not Destiny 2, this is how you get to play Destiny 2, right? And there's really great conversations around, should this be fun? What are the good attributes of something like a dashboard? So we had lots of those discussions, and we decided, yes, this would be a good thing to try. But it's very expensive, very time-consuming to just spin up a whole new set of playtests. You have to start playtesting the product, you want to start playtesting competitors, playtests are expensive. So I ran it through my mental checklist and even had some of these discussions with the team. So of course, the first one, we do believe. I believe going from just usability data to collecting attitudinal data is going to improve that experience. Will we be learning something new? Absolutely. Does it push us out of our comfort zone? Now, for me, I was very comfortable with playtests, but it was a little scary thinking about doing it on something like the dashboard, and the rest of the team was just like, you're going to give us a fun score for the dashboard? Aren't you the people who give us usability? But that's why it was exciting, and that's why it seemed like a great strategic move. And that goes to the other one, right? Does it help how people view user research? You can only be the people who give a usability finding or usability report for so long, right? You're not building, you're not growing if that's all a team thinks of you. And in our case, it was the platform team. They're like, can you just tell us how usable it is? You want to constantly be looking for ways to offer more value, different types of data that you can give these teams. So they start relying on you in different contexts and expect more from you as time goes on. So we went through and we did this, and again, I'm very happy to say it was successful. This was, again, the 2017 release. We've kept it going through 2018, and now I can point to a bunch of different teams, like I said, Game Pass, PC, all of these teams who are building stuff are using this process, and now it's even just a year and a half later, it's just expected. You wouldn't try to ship a product in Xbox right now without playtesting it because of this hard work and because of the sort of strategic decision-making process we tried to go through. So that is it. This is the summary of the 5 tools. Like I said, I'm really hoping that this helped you think a little bit more about what thinking strategically means, and there are these 5 things that you can go off and do right now. The first one is just that mental shift of going from a funnel to a megaphone. The other is trying to package up your work, how you and your team work, so you can communicate it effectively and set those expectations. The next one is going from crossing the streams of data to really crossing the teams and aligning yourself with the people that you work with, not necessarily just the data. Embracing points of view. If you find yourself having somebody ask you a quick question, you give them a half-an-hour response, you probably have a pretty strong point of view on whatever that topic is. Start thinking about how you can formalize that and write that down and share it. And then have 5 reasons for doing anything. This will, I promise you, I know it sounds kind of silly, you'll do this at work, you'll do this at home, you'll do this if you're thinking about buying a house. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you already work in checklists, but I've just found this very useful, whether you do it mentally or you write it down. So that is it. I hope we have a little bit of time for Q&A, but if not, please hit me up here and I will be at lunch. And again, thanks very much. This has just been fantastic.